Kids, welcome back to our church. You guys aren't talking back yet. Good morning. Hello. Good to see you guys. Let me also take this opportunity to welcome those who are tuning in today at home or from the beach or the mountains or wherever you are today. It's great to have you, and thank you for joining us today. Let me also say Happy Father's Day.
Happy Father's Day.
Happy Father's Day. You know, they say that Father's Day is just like Mother's Day, only you don't spend as much on the gift. And I see a few dads looking around like, what gift? Well, whether you're a dad or not, or you're celebrating your father or the life and memory of your father, Happy Father's Day. It's great to see you today. Today, just if I can be personal with you for just a moment, today's a very difficult Father's Day for Karen, my wife, and her brother and her sisters, and the rest of our family. I wasn't able to be here last week, which I appreciate Diego for jumping in really at the very last minute to give the message. But Karen's dad has been sick for a while, and we got a report Saturday night that he was, just not really doing well at all. And we had talked about maybe going to see him Monday, and I'm glad we didn't do that because he passed away Sunday night. And so we got to be there for that. But this week we, as a family and as friends, we said our goodbyes to Mr. Payne. And literally we buried Mr. Payne on Friday, and here it is Sunday, Father's Day. So it's a difficult time. And this week, as I was just, thinking about my family and what we were going through, it's kind of a unique position to be in when you're the pastor and you're the pastor of your family, also a dad, a husband, son-in-law, those kind of things. It's just kind of a unique perspective. And so I was just looking at things all together, and I decided that today I was not going to preach what you might call a traditional Father's Day message. And when I say traditional, what I mean is I'm not going to preach a sermon where you might talk about how to be a good father or a better father or even the value of a good father. And those are worthy topics, don't get me wrong. But instead, I want to talk about how to deal with problems. I want to talk about how to deal with difficult times, how you face hard times when hard times hit. And I think this is a message that fathers can use, but I think mothers can use it. I think men and women, whether you have kids or not, you can use it. I think it's a message for everyone. Now, you might say, but, Jimmy, right now I'm not going through a hard time in my life, and that's fantastic. Hopefully, everything in your life is trending up and to the right, but that is not the current reality for most of us. Just to open up this file in your mind as we get started today, maybe the hard time that you're dealing with right now is unemployment. Maybe the hard time that you're dealing with right now is that you still have more month left over at the end of your monthly pay. That's a big deal. I stopped at Hardee's on my way to church this morning. It's $4 for a sausage biscuit. Anybody here work at Hardee's? I'm not picking on Hardee's. I mean, it's that way at McDonald's or anywhere else that you go to. Things are just so expensive. And that's just one of those small things. But things are so expensive. So maybe your issue is money. Maybe that's the hard time in your life. Maybe you're swimming in a river of debt. You're not swimming so much anymore as you are just treading water, and maybe you feel like you're about to go under. Maybe the trouble, the hard time that you're dealing with today is your marriage. I mean, that's a reality. That's not just a reality outside of this building. That's a reality inside this building. That's a reality for many of the people who are tuning in today online to watch today's message. Maybe recently you've been caught off guard by a big bill that's come in and you don't know how you're going to pay it. Maybe it's a chronic health problem. Maybe you're losing a member of your family. Here's my point. We all go through hard times, don't we? Am I the only one? We all go through hard times, right? We all deal with difficult situations. Everyone has problems. And this is true whether you're a follower of Jesus or not. Because listen, just because you're a Christian doesn't mean you're exempt from problems. In fact, Jesus never promised us a problem-free life. Man, one of the things where some of us get so tripped up in following Jesus is when a problem hits, we think, wait a minute, I didn't think problems were going to happen anymore. Yes, problems happen. What Jesus actually says about problems, hard times, and troubles is this. In John 16:33, he says, in this world you will have many troubles. But take heart. There's an exclamation point at the end of that. But take heart. In other words, don't lose heart. Don't lose your faith. Don't let it cripple you in life. Don't let it stop you. He says, because I have overcome the world. In other words, I'm bigger than your problems. I'm bigger than your hard times. So problems, whether they're big or small, they're a part of the human experience. And since Jesus says that we can't avoid problems, I think we should spend some time learning what to do when we have problems, how to persevere through difficult times, and how to keep going even when life gets hard. Now, before we go any further, I want you to notice that the title of today's message is How to Go Through Tough Times. No, it doesn't say that, does it? It says how to grow through hard times. It's intentional. It's a small adjustment, but I think it makes a big difference. And it's intentional because I'm not just interested in helping you get through your problems or get through tough times. I want to help you grow through hard times. I think that's important. See, most of us, and I think it's normal. Most of us want to just get through the problem. But since you're going through the problem, why not learn from it? See, the reason that a lot of us keep going through the same hard times is because we don't learn the lessons from the time before when we went through this difficult time. So why not grow through the problem? Why not get better and stronger having survived some difficult situation? Now, I'm not suggesting that you stay in the problem any longer than necessary. I don't think there's anything noble in just being a martyr in life. But it's also foolish to waste a difficult experience. So don't just get through the problems. Grow through them. Today we're going to look at the life of a man in the Bible named Joseph. Say Joseph. Joseph. Now, this is not Joseph in the New Testament. This is not Jesus' earthly father. This is Joseph in the Old Testament. He's one of my favorite people in the entire Bible. Joseph learned a lot about how to persevere through hard times when you face big problems. His story is told, if you want to just read more about it, then you should. His story is told in Genesis chapters 37 through 50. And if you think about it, that's a lot of real estate. That's a lot of pages. That's a lot of words dealing with one person. And I think that this just makes sense because Joseph and his story, it's a big part of God's redemptive story in the world. But also, I think there are some practical reasons. For example, Joseph's life has so much to teach us about how to go through difficult times, how to face problems. And we don't have time to look at all of Joseph's life. Can't do that in one message. But we're going to look at one specific time in his life, a time when maybe he was at the lowest point in his life. It was a time when he was stuck in an Egyptian prison. Now, there are a few things that you ought to know about the story just to kind of give some context and help you understand a little more about the situation. Joseph came from a big family. How many of you came from a big family? Just a show of hands. A few of you. Well, for Joseph, a big family was that he was the 11th of 12 sons. Now, more than likely, there are girls in that family too, but mostly when you're talking about Joseph's life, they're only thinking about the sons. And this was a very dysfunctional family. I'm not going to ask you to raise hands if you came from a very dysfunctional family, but I'll tell you this, that every family has some dysfunction. Everyone. You know why, right? Because of you. Because of me, because of us. We're human beings. We're all dysfunctional. There's something wrong with all of us. It only makes sense that we would have dysfunctional families. Well, let me dig into this a little deeper. Joseph's older brothers hated him. And they hated him because his father Jacob did not hide the fact that Joseph was his favorite son. He made it very obvious. And this all came to a head one day when Jacob made a special, expensive, multicolored coat, which also had long sleeves, by the way, which lets you know he's the foreman. He's not the guy doing the work. The guys doing the work don't have long sleeves to get in the way of whatever work it is that they're doing. And Joseph had a long sleeve coat. It implied that he was the boss of his much older brothers. It was a status symbol. Most of Joseph's brothers, maybe all their lives, never had a clothing, a garment that would have color to it. Everything in that day and time, it was natural, neutral color, which I know that in our world, a lot of times that's a good thing. In their world, it was just bland and boring. And now here is Joseph, he has this coat of many colors. Well, one day, Jacob sent Joseph out into the fields to watch over his brothers, again, like a supervisor. And the brothers had enough of it. They plotted to kill Joseph. They beat him up. They threw him into a well so that he would die there. But later, they decided to sell him into slavery instead. I mean, if you're going to kill a guy, why not make a few bucks off of it? And if you don't kill him, you sell him into slavery. I mean, you can sort of have some wiggle room there thinking, well, we didn't really kill him. But they knew what would happen to him. They sold him into slavery. Now, it gets worse. While Joseph was in Egypt, he was thrown into prison for a crime he did not commit. And despite all of this, Joseph kept his faith. He kept his faith in God. And the story here reminds us that no matter what we're facing, no matter how big or bad our problems might be, God is with us. Look at the next verse there in your notes. This is Genesis 39:21. And it's such a powerful verse. And it comes right at the point of the story when Joseph is first thrown into prison. And it says, "But the Lord was with Joseph." I mean, there are areas he's thrown in. There's not a door that would slam shut. You just have that own sense of closure in your mind, where he's thrown into prison, and things could not be darker for him. But the Lord was with Joseph in the prison and showed him his faithful love. And the Lord made Joseph a favorite with the prison warden. Now, some of you who are listening right now, maybe you feel stuck in your life. Maybe you feel like your life is in a prison and you have no idea what to do to get out of it. Maybe you've lost all hope of getting out of it. I mean, maybe you're thinking, the only way out of this life is to end my life. Maybe you've been stabbed in the back by somebody. Maybe someone lied about you and it's ruined your reputation. Your prison could be debt, it could be loneliness, it could be an addiction. This story tells us that when we're in our darkest seasons in life, God is there with us. And He'll help us to overcome. Let me give you a word of warning before we keep going here. Having a strong or overcoming faith does not mean that everything in your life is going to work out the way you want it to. Can I just say that again? I'm being real with you. Say, keep it real, preacher. Yeah, I'm going to do that. Having a strong or overcoming faith does not mean that everything in your life is going to work out the way you want it to. It doesn't mean that everything in your life is one day going to go back to the way it was before. It all came apart. And just because everything worked out great for Joseph later in his life, it doesn't mean that everything's going to work out that way for everyone. The Bible's an honest book. And not every ending in the Bible is a happy one. It didn't work out perfectly for Saul, or Samson, or David. Life wasn't a fairy tale ending for Peter or Paul. Or for those of you who grew up in the 60s and 70s, and Mary. So, and listen, here's my point. Your life might not end up exactly the way you want it to. Having faith that overcomes is about learning how to face problems and to face it with perseverance and how to keep going when hard times hit your life. But it doesn't mean that everything is going to work out the way you want it to. So if you're taking notes, let me give you 5 things to remember. 5 things from Joseph's story, and at least the episode where he's in prison, that'll help you to grow your faith whenever hard times hit. So you don't just get through your problems, you grow through your problems. Here's the first one. My faith grows stronger when I turn toward God during hard times. My faith grows stronger when I turn toward God during hard times. So turn toward God, not away from God. When a hard time hits your life, don't lose your faith. Don't move away from God. Let's pick up Joseph's story in Genesis 39:20. It says, so he took Joseph and threw him into the prison where the king's prisoners were held, and there he remained. No Miranda rights, no right to a speedy trial, no written grievance, just thrown into prison. Keep in mind that he's a long way from home. No one in Egypt cares who his dad is. Back where he's from, dad's a big deal, but not here. He's been betrayed by his family, sold into slavery. Now he's locked up in this prison for a crime he didn't commit. The prison was called the place where the king's prisoners were held. This means it was especially bad. It was dark, dirty, disgusting, and listen, it was a hopeless place. It was hopeless because most people who are thrown into this sentence, or into this prison, it's a life sentence with no hope for parole. You might get out if, for some reason, the king, the Pharaoh, has a change of heart in how he looks at human beings. It's just doubtful. You get thrown into a place like this, and they forget about you. But even though Joseph was in a place that was like hell on earth, Joseph never lost his faith in God. Listen, whenever you're going through hard times, you have two choices. You can either turn toward God or you can turn away from Him. You can turn toward God or you can turn away from Him. And a lot of times what happens when we're going through something that's difficult is that we blame God. And we say something like, God, why did you let this happen to me? Like somehow or for some reason it shouldn't happen to you. You know, the truth is because we live in a broken, fallen world, we all ought to be surprised whenever things are not going against us. Why not you? Why not me? God, why did this relationship turn out the way it did, not the way I wanted it? Why did I have to lose my job? And whenever we blame God, we're turning away from Him, and we start turning toward other things to help us cope, including ourselves. And the problem is that on our own, on your own, you don't have the resources, I don't have the resources to overcome some of the problems that hit us in life. Some of them you can, but many of them you can't. Joseph is in a place where he himself, he has little to do with what happens in this future. Like Joseph, sometimes we face problems that are just too big for us to handle. So let the problem that you're facing right now be an opportunity to turn toward God. I mean, I'll guarantee you, I've been doing this for a long time. I'll guarantee you that there's someone here, maybe more than one, and certainly there are people watching today, and you're either going through a hard time that's caused you to turn away from God, or that's happened in the past. It could be happening right now. And you've turned your life away from God. Let this be an opportunity to turn you toward God and to grow and strengthen your faith. Next, my faith in God grows stronger when I serve others whenever I feel stuck. It's kind of wordy, but you get the point. My faith in God grows stronger when I serve others whenever I feel stuck. Imagine what Joseph was going through in that prison. I'm not going to ask if you've ever been to prison.
No.
But I got some doubts. I have some suspicions. I have 3 recurring nightmares. I won't tell you what 2 of them are just because I don't want to take the time with it, but one of them is going to prison. Like a life sentence. And I know it's kind of fun to preach up there saying, my recurring nightmares, you don't want to go to prison. It's why I no longer have road rage. It's why I've just learned, hey, the horn's there for emergencies. Keep your hands and arms inside the windows. Let things go. I do not want to go to prison. I was scared straight in the 70s. I do not want to go to prison. So just try to imagine what Joseph is going through. And here he is. He's stuck in prison for something he didn't do. Everything in his life is trending downward. And it would have been easy for him to just shrink back and withdraw from everyone and everything that's going on around him. He could have thrown himself a pity party right there in the prison. You know what happens when you throw a pity party, right? You sulk, you pout, you sit down and you just marinate your life in your own misery. Joseph could have done that. And most of us would have understood if he had. But Joseph didn't do that. He didn't sulk, he served. He didn't hide, he helped. He didn't pout. He persevered. And then one day, the king threw a couple of new people into the prison. One was a cupbearer, that means he was a food taster, and the other was a baker. And apparently there had been some sort of attempt to kill the king, the Pharaoh, by poisoning his food. And these guys, because one is the food taster, the cupbearer, and the other is the baker, these guys are prime suspects, and they're going to stay in prison until all this is sorted out. And while they were there, these guys had some night dreams. They had some dreams they didn't understand. And David has a history of being able to understand dreams. Look at the next couple of verses there in the notes. Genesis 40, verses 6 through 8. When Joseph saw them the next morning, he noticed that they both looked upset. "Why do you look so worried today?" he asked them. And they replied, "We both had dreams last night, but no one can tell us what they mean." Underline the phrase, he noticed that they were both upset. It didn't look right. This means that Joseph noticed their problems. He saw that they were dealing with a difficult time. And hey, listen, the deal is everybody in that prison is going through a hard time. They're having serious problems. They're all in the same boat. But Joseph decided to help them. What's interesting about what happened here is there was actually the helping of the cupbearer that led Joseph to his own blessing, but many years to come. Keep that on the back burner of your mind. He's helping a guy now, but he wouldn't see the benefit until much later. And in fact, I think because of the situation, Joseph is not expecting anything. I also think that he decides that while he's there, he's going to make the best of the situation. I know that it's a normal reaction in life. When a difficult time hits, just pull back and focus on your own needs. That's a natural thing to do, right? And as a pastor, I've heard this so many times through the years. Pastor, I just feel like right now I need to pull back and focus on myself for a while. And that sounds right, doesn't it? But it's terribly wrong. It's the wrong thing to do, and here's why. It will cause you to become selfish. One of the paradoxes of life is that the more you focus on yourself, the emptier you are. The more you focus on yourself, the less happiness and joy you have. But if you'll show that you care about other people, if you'll give compassion away, if you'll love others, not only will it be a blessing for them, but God will bless you too. And He'll use that serving to help someone else to bring you out of whatever problem that you're stuck in right now. Next, my faith in God grows stronger when I don't become bitter when people let me down. My faith in God grows stronger when I don't become bitter when people let me down. Joseph served the cupbearer. He ministered to him. He helped him where he could. He interpreted his dream. And the only thing Joseph asked for was this small favor of, hey, don't forget about me when you're released. Look at Genesis 40, starting in verse 14. Joseph said, and please remember me and do me a favor when things go well for you. Mention me to Pharaoh so he might let me out of this place. For I was kidnapped from my homeland, the land of the Hebrews, and now I'm here in prison, but I did nothing to deserve it. But look what actually happened. Verse 23 says, Pharaoh's chief cupbearer, however, forgot all about Joseph, never giving him another thought. What a jerk. I mean, how is that for being let down? How many of you know, just as a show of hands, how many of you know that people will let you down? People are going to let us down. We're going to let them down. That doesn't make it right. It's just being honest. And a lot of times the people who let us down are the people who are closest to us. And sometimes it's the people we help the most. And that really just grinds my gears. It hurts the worst. But I've let people down. And I've had people let me down. I've hurt people, and you have too. I've had people hurt me. And I've learned that you can either forgive that person and move on, or you can hold on to that hurt until you turn it into bitterness. Listen, holding on to bitterness and anger, it only hurts you. It doesn't hurt the other person. You're the one who is reliving the pain over and over and over again. I'll guarantee you there are people in this room or people who are watching online, and right now you're holding on to bitterness towards someone else, and the person that you're angry at has no idea you're angry at them. He or she has moved on. They don't even think about it anymore. The only person who is thinking about it, the only person who is hurt by it all, is the one who doesn't forgive, forget, and move on. Next, my faith grows stronger when I trust God is with me when I feel forgotten. When I feel forgotten. Joseph was in prison. His family thought he was dead. I mean, if his dad had any idea he was alive, Jacob loved him so much he would have turned over every stone in Egypt trying to find him. But nobody's looking for him. His friends had forgotten about him. It was all wrong. Well, actually, it wasn't all wrong. Genesis 39:21 says, But the Lord was with Joseph in the prison and showed him his faithful love, and the Lord made Joseph a favorite with the prison warden. And you can see throughout Joseph's life, if you'll go back this week and read the story, you'll see that God was with Joseph when his brothers beat him and threw him into a well. God was with Joseph when his brothers sold him into slavery. God was with Joseph when he was falsely accused and thrown into prison. And God was with Joseph when he was forgotten in prison and felt all alone. So where is God when you feel forgotten, abandoned, misunderstood, and hurt? He's right there with you. You're not alone in your problems. God is with you, and you have to trust this even when you feel alone. That's what faith is. It's not wishful thinking. And it's not about, if I just keep saying that God is with me over and over again, I'll feel like He's there. No, faith is the assurance that He's there. And then finally, my faith in God grows stronger when I keep an eternal perspective when I feel like giving up. By this, I mean, you look beyond the problem. And I know that's hard because you want to focus on that problem. I mean, it seems to be the big thing that's right in front of your face. You have to look beyond, you have to have an eternal perspective. It had been 2 years since the cupbearer had forgotten about Joseph. 2 years. How many years? 2. That's a long time when you're in prison. But Joseph believed that God was working behind the scenes. He had an eternal perspective that God was working for the greater good of his life. And then one night, the Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, had a dream that he didn't understand. It was a nightmare. None of his advisors could interpret the dream. And then all of a sudden, the cupbearer remembered Joseph. He said, "Hey, do you remember that time you threw me into prison? Remember that time you didn't trust me so much, you thought that I was trying to kill you? Well, I met a guy in there who could interpret dreams. His name was Joseph. He's in prison to this very day. I'll bet he can interpret the dream." Now think about this. If Joseph would have sulked and pouted and looked at the cupbearer and the baker lost his head, by the way, because he was trying to poison the king. But if he would have looked at that cupbearer and the baker and said, "You got problems, I've got problems. You deal with your stuff, I'll deal with mine." If he would have had that attitude, this moment would have never come. Yes, the cupbearer forgot about Joseph for a time. Yes, Joseph was disappointed. Yes, Joseph had to wait in that prison for another 2 years. But while Joseph was waiting, God was working. And some of you are going through a difficult time right now, and you're wondering what in the world is going on. More than likely, while you're waiting, God is working. So what happens next? Well, the king's guards, they go and get Joseph out of prison. Gave him a bath. And this guy hadn't had a bath in years. Years. They cut his hair, put clean clothes on him before taking him to the king. And when they did take him to the king, Joseph interpreted the dream. And by the way, it's a side note to what we're talking about today. But God used Joseph in these horrible conditions, in these terrible, hurtful, hard times that Joseph endured in his life. God would use Joseph to save his own people back home and to save untold numbers of Egyptians from the drought that was coming. The Pharaoh, he decided, this is a guy I could use on my team. So look at Genesis 41:41. Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I hereby put you in charge of the entire land of Egypt." That was a big deal. If you look back over Joseph's life, he was the 11th of 12 sons, which meant he had no power and influence. He was sold as a slave into Egypt, then thrown into prison. It looked like his life was stuck and going nowhere. But God was with Joseph. Joseph never lost his faith in God. He let the hard times grow him and strengthen him. And God took him from a pit to the palace. And I think in all of our lives, I'm not promising you a palace. But I'm promising you that God will be with you in the pit, help you get out of the pit. And if you'll let him, he'll grow you in the pit to make you better once you're out of the pit. In this life, we all have problems, don't we? But you can let your problem point your life away from God or toward God. And I'll tell you this, that if you put your faith and your trust in Jesus, who is the Christ, if you're faithful to Him, no matter what happens to you in this life, there's heaven in the next life.
Amen.
And every problem that you, because you know, I have a YouTube account. I have a TikTok account. Not always part of the TikTok thing. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. I see some of the same videos that you see. And I see videos from time to time about people that when they were born into this world, they seem to have no chance at life whatsoever. Where they're born, the parents they're born to, it looks like they never have a chance. I have family members that have just lived through hell on earth in their lifetime. And I had one of those family members say to me one time, and she's not the kind of person who would even, she doesn't walk up to just anyone and say, I've had a terrible life. You wouldn't believe the problems that have happened to me. I could write a book about her life. But it would be so sad. I'm not sure people would want to read it. But her response to me is, no matter how bad things get here, no matter what I have to endure, I put my faith and my trust in Jesus, and heaven is at the end of this life. That's what's next. And so whatever I've had to endure here will seem small compared to the joy of eternity in heaven that God has waiting on me. And that can be a testimony for all of us. Don't give up. Don't quit on life. Stay faithful. If you're a follower of Jesus and you're going through a difficult time, what you ought to do right now is recommit your life today to following Him and moving forward with Him. Learning the lessons that He wants to show. This is not even a part of the message. I'm just going to give you this for free. I think one of the reasons we stay in difficult times, hard times, is because we refuse to learn the lessons. I don't believe that God puts us in bad situations, but I think He uses bad situations to help us, to teach us, to grow us, and I think He will keep us there until we learn the lessons. So if you're in a bad spot in life, maybe the thing you need to do is smarten up. Start learning. Start growing. Start asking yourself, God, why do you still have me here? Show me what you want me to learn, so I can get out of here. Maybe you've never received Jesus' gift of peace and eternal life. So if you've never put your trust in Him, I want to invite you to commit your life to Him right now for the first time. So with every head bowed, every eye closed, I want to pray with you. First, if you've never trusted Jesus as your Savior, if you've never committed your life to Him, to following Him, say this prayer with me, whether you're in this room or you're watching online. And just say, Jesus, today I commit my life to you. I've tried to do it all on my own, but I know that I can't. I'm not perfect. I've sinned. I've come up short in life. So today, for the first time, I put my trust in you. Please come into my life. I want to leave this old life of mine behind. I want to follow you from this day forward in the fellowship of your church. And then for those of you who have already put your trust in Jesus, you're already following him. Would you recommit your life to him today and just say, Jesus, I commit my life to you again. I commit to live for you every day. I need you. The problems I face are too much for me, so I bring them to you today. I give them to you. Thank you for replacing my worries with your peace. Give me the strength and courage to live for you every day. Jesus, we pray in your great name.